Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, Play the Opinion Potomac Watch Podcast. That is, Play the Opinion Potomac Watch Podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. I'm Paul Gigot here with the Potomac Watch Podcast of the Wall Street Journal opinion pages, and I'm here with Elliot Kaufman and Bill McGurn. So, all right, let's turn to President Biden's final days in office. He leaves on January 20th with only about 5 days left in his term. He gave his farewell address from the Oval Office on Wednesday night with some notable lines. Let's hear it.
I want to warn the country of some things that give me great concern. This is a dangerous and that's a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of a very few ultra-wealthy people. And the dangerous consequences if their abuse of power is left unchecked. Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead. I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country as well. Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation, enabling the abuse of power. The free press is crumbling. Editors are disappearing. Social media is giving up on fact-checking. The truth is smothered by lies told for power and for profit. We must hold the social platforms accountable to protect our children, our families, and our very democracy.
Well, Bill, as a former president's speechwriter, you probably have some observations here about this. I have to say, I mean, there were conscious echoes here of Eisenhower's farewell address where he talked about the military-industrial complex. But that reference to the tech-industrial complex and an emerging oligarchy was cast not merely as a warning, so much as the devil is on the doorstep. It's right there, and your democracy is threatened. And it seems to me to be an implicit attack on Donald Trump and some of the CEOs from the tech world who have gone down to Mar-a-Lago. But, I mean, a threat to democracy and oligarchy running things, I mean, it just was, to me, just way over the top.
Yeah, you mean like the oligarchy that suppressed the New York Post story on the Hunter Biden laptop with the help of the Biden administration? Look, I share probably your views of everything on this speech. It was a bad speech. It doesn't matter what he said. No one is paying attention anymore. And last night we saw why. He delivered it like leaving substance aside. The tone of a president giving a farewell should be, I'm inviting you into the Oval Office. You're going to hear my reflections on the last 8 years, and I'm going to confide in you. I trust you. Instead, Joe Biden seemed to use the camera to bring people in and wag his finger to lecture. If you were smart, as you should be, you realize just how brilliant I was. It may take 10 years. It just seemed full of petty grievances and assertions that you mentioned some of them that the voters rejected at the polls. And you could see when he gave that speech why the public rejected Joe Biden. I mean, the irony is, if you go back and look at Reagan's farewell, even Obama's, they had some warnings in it, but it's much more upbeat and it's much more about, I sit here and I reflect the common wisdom of the American people. I thank you for putting me here. And that kind of intimate tone. And instead, we got a lot of hectoring. I feel like my former colleague at the White House, Dana Perino, she was watching, she tweeted out, I am trying to say something nice about this speech, but he's not giving me the opportunity. It just seems small. It'll be forgotten. By tomorrow, no one will be talking about it.
I mean, I am reluctant to kick a man when he's walking out the door here, as Bill suggests, it can be forgotten. On the other hand, he keeps kicking us as he's walking out the door. I mean, he's lecturing, as Bill said, you know, someday, all you folks out there will recognize all that I did for you. It's just unfortunate you don't do that now.
Right.
And the fault is because there are no editors in the media. and the free press is collapsing. Just kind of over the top. And then the social media giving up on fact-checking has to be the line of the speech. I mean, what's happening is that Facebook is decided they're no longer going to employ people who are called fact-checkers to censor views that Facebook doesn't like. Elliot.
Is that the end of democracy? I don't know. Whereas in the past, of course, you had Biden administration officials, government officials leaning on the tech companies to decide what's true, what isn't, decide what's approved, what isn't. That sounds more like a tech industrial complex, something more like what Eisenhower may have meant with that, similar coinage. I mean, it just seemed to me that he had a laundry list. I mean, he talked about the climate crisis, disinformation, dark money, Supreme Court reform, but none of it with much passion, detail, or analysis. Nothing really went beyond the surface. And it was all things that we've heard so many times before. I mean, you didn't have to be president to give that speech. And you'd figure with his 50 years of public service, his 4 years of presidency, he would have something more to say to the American people, but I didn't hear it.
Well, there was an undertone of bitterness there, I thought. And then when you combine that with the fact that Jill Biden, his wife, has been expressing similar tones of bitterness, in particular towards Nancy Pelosi for ousting her husband from the race. They believe she played a big role in it, friend of many decades. Pelosi was a friend of theirs. And you hear it in Biden's comments in the recent weeks that he would have beaten Donald Trump, which can't thrill his vice president, Kamala Harris, saying, well, geez, I made a mistake. Implicitly, he's saying, I made a mistake in getting out, or they made a mistake in forcing me out. And here you were stuck with Kamala, and she was a loser. It's just not a gracious, or dare I say, presidential way to go out, although the term presidential these days does not have quite the grand meaning that it might have. One final note, Bill, you can have the last word. The president leaves with, according to a new Fox poll and another poll that's going to come out that I know of, approval rating of 36%. 36% as he leaves office. Now, that's not good.
Right. I mean, look, that's what Joe Biden can accept. The real objection to him, the American people did elect him, but he started losing support for his actions, not based on lies. His approval ratings first went under 50 after he botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. And worse than that, he tried to tell everyone his extraordinary success when people saw chaos and Americans being left behind. So I think he's not engaged in any self-reflection. And you point out the problems with Kamala Harris and also some of the other Democrats. I mean, that's really the behind-the-scenes story about politics, right? Nigel Lawson, Chancellor Executive for, I think, Margaret Thatcher, once said, the people in the other party are the opposition, but the people in my party,
they're the enemy.
They're the enemy because they're the ones that want your job, like Kamala Harris. So that's not unusual. It is unusual, I think. We've seen so many public expressions, like, as you mentioned, Jill Biden telling the Washington Post how disappointed she is in Nancy Pelosi and so forth. I expect we're going to hear a lot more of this and see a lot more finger pointing when the memoirs come out by both pro-Biden and anti-Biden factions within the Democratic Party. It was a missed opportunity. As you said, I think the undertone of bitterness came through, but in the end, I think it doesn't matter. People don't remember these things, and now we're on to the Trump era, and whatever else we know, there's going to be a lot of new fireworks.
Well, that is for sure. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Elliot. Thank you all for listening. We're here every day on Potomac Watch, and we will be here tomorrow and all of next week and beyond talking about Trump 2.